to the Rural Revival Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Larson. This week we're with Keith and Sandi Mitcham of Mitcham Livestock, a custom cattle feeding operation in Cherokee, Oklahoma. Keith and Sandi decided to move across the country with a few cattle and their life savings to go all in on reviving this feedlot that had a great past but needed a little love. This is an important story because it's about an escape from urban sprawl and some of the not-so-great effects of economic development. It's also a story of hard work, faith, and chasing your dreams. So here we go with Keith and Sandi. Well, we're here today in Cherokee, Oklahoma with Keith and Sandi Mitcham of Mitcham Livestock. Guys, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks.
Hi.
Well, you're both pretty new to Oklahoma. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you met.
Well, we both grew up in Georgia, and then we met on a blind date set up by my sister, Joni.
So tell us about life in Georgia. You grew up rural and were pretty rooted there, right?
I would say, yeah. I mean, our parents both lived, his lived across the street from us and mine was 25 minutes down the road. And we,
In my place, my parents was a Centennial family farm, so it was, it was rural there at one time.
Yeah.
The where we lived was rural, but if you got outside the fence post, wasn't as rural as it used to be several years ago.
So Atlanta was starting to come into your neighborhood, basically, right?
Pretty much. There were subdivisions on each side of us, and even though we were, maybe 45 minutes from Atlanta, it would take you an hour and a half to get there. Just with, 10 minutes to get out of the grocery store parking lot and just lots of people. So
you saw it change a lot over your lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I went from one high school in the county to 5,
Wow.
So it was quite a good bit of growth.
Yeah. Sandi, you've been a small business owner for 20 years.
Yes.
Tell us about how you started that and grew your business over the years.
Well, my sister and I both worked for an aunt in high school that had a shop inside a mall. And after we both graduated, I had gone into real estate for a while and worked for some real estate companies. And she had graduated from college, and I decided that I really didn't want to I wanted something with a little bit more flexibility. I didn't want to be in the real estate industry, and so I went back to work for my aunt. My sister Robin graduated from college and decided that she didn't want to do what she went to school for. So she came back to work for my aunt, and then after a couple of years, kind of long story short, we decided to open an embroidery store. And we found a town that was starting to grow, and we opened Southern Sisters, and we had it for 18 years. So it changed and evolved a lot, where most of our stuff, we could put a name or initials because that's a very Southern thing to do.
Yes.
And so that was the majority of our store. And then over the course of the 18 years, it kind of evolved to where we still did the monogramming, we still did embroidery, and we still customized and put names and monograms, but it wasn't the majority of the store anymore. So,
And you built that. I mean, you had a nice group of employees by that time, right?
we did. We started out with just me and my sister, and we brought on one other lady for a while. And then I think probably at that first couple of years, maybe we might have had two total besides ourselves. And then I think we figured about 7 or 8 years ago, we moved the store, almost doubled it in size, and, grew the employees to about, I think, maybe around 8.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. So Keith, tell me about your operation in Georgia and what you did there.
When I got out of school, we showed cattle, went through FFA and kind of that just we always grew up there on the family farm, but never made a living out of it. So when I got out of school, talking about kind of the growth in our area, the availability of farmland wasn't as great, or pasture land to run cattle on. So I had the opportunity of leasing a pretty big farm pretty close to us. And so in being a leased property, we started raising or buying and purchasing stocker calves. It gave us a little more flexibility to, kind of run more cattle throughout the year. So we basically started buying what we call high-risk cattle out of the sale barn and just, try to keep them as healthy as you can and grow them as cheap as you can. So, and that was basically what we did in Georgia for the past 20 years.
So essentially, especially in the later years, you were trying to ranch in the middle of what was becoming a metropolitan area.
Correct. Yes, it was. You kind of want to be where you're like kind or something. If you want to wear a cowboy hat to town, you don't want to be looked at. Or it was kind of getting on that side of, I think we were eating in a restaurant one night, and we were talking about how
Different
it was,
or how different, just the different people that were there. They just.
And it was kind of more or less, it come down to the disconnect of the actual family farm, and we were the actual different ones.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You're just looking around the restaurant and looking at what, there was different cultures and different types of people and just all walks of, life, different people. And I just kind of looked at Keith and I said, well, I think we're the different ones.
And not in a bad way.
Not in a bad way,
yeah.
but just, you grow up in a place all your life and it's the same kind of people that and then all of a sudden there's more people there and, you don't go to town anymore and see somebody that became the norm. Used to you go to the grocery store, go to dinner, and you'd see at least one person you knew, and it got to the point where you didn't know a soul in the restaurant.
Wow. So a lot of us think about economic development as a good thing, but in this case, you experienced some of the bad side of economic development.
Yeah, they were building a movie studio, about 3 miles from where we lived. Covington was starting to become, I think they've nicknamed it the Hollywood of the South. A lot of movies and TV shows were being filmed there. You'd see them pretty much on a daily basis. And so just I think, is it Facebook or Amazon has built a hub there, and it's just, there's lots of people coming, but, they push out that pasture land, or they don't want the smell of your cows, or, or getting behind you on the tractor going from one field to another, they don't realize.
But in a sense, they still want that kind of that majestic view of the pasture. Just don't want all the stuff that comes with it. It's right there. So
that's good. Well, when was it that you decided we've got to go somewhere else?
About 4 or 5 years ago, really, we kind of, knew that our days were probably numbered, but I would say more so in the last 3 years, we knew our youngest son would be graduating from high school, and if we were going to do something, that's when we needed to do it. So,
and my parents and even my brother, though, was, I don't know if capitalize is the right word, but they did the agritourism side of it, and still are doing that, just because you kind of have to adapt to that right there. And they've been very successful with that, with the corn maze and strawberries and pick your own, and in that type of setting, being that close to Metro Atlanta, and people are really they enjoy that experience coming out to the farm right there. So but being on the production ag side of it, it wasn't something or an area that we needed to be in. So.
Yeah. And when you want to keep doing that,
That's right.
Kind of have to look elsewhere. So, where did you start looking? Were you open to anything?
Kind of, but we did about 8 years ago. We came to Oklahoma and visited my sister. And I wouldn't say it was on that trip, but it was on a trip probably not too long after that. We kind of would visit and, just loved the simplicity, the way of life, just the slower pace. So we did kind of, I guess, when we very first started looking, we did start looking in Georgia and tried to, make some properties work there, and just wasn't jiving. And that's kind of where we turned our, I guess,
Well,
more
we
so.
had some parameters too. We didn't want to go farther south because it did get hotter and humid and
Gnats.
and then the North Georgia. I mean, just the price of land, was just not conducive to farming. So, and then a couple other areas we were kind of somewhat concerned 10, 20 years down the road, would we still be in the same boat,
So when we really got serious, I think I really starting to look outside of Georgia. I think we concentrated it more so in Oklahoma. I think it was familiar to us, was part of it, but we didn't physically look at very many properties, but we looked at thousands of properties on the internet.
Yeah.
So, we'd look, I think we looked in, a few properties in Texas, but you get too close to Dallas, and, the price of land is very expensive, and, there's a little bit of urban sprawl going on there. And we just, like he said, didn't want to be in the same same boat 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So, we, started looking pretty seriously in Oklahoma. We basically just Google searched.
Yeah.
We kind of had a parameters of how many acres we wanted, and, and in the price range we kind of wanted to stay in. And we took a trip out here a couple of years ago and went and looked at kind of south central Oklahoma. We looked in northeastern Oklahoma a little bit. And then we finally, I did a Google, I can't remember what it was, but I remember looking at something and I saw, and the word feedlot kind of jumped out of the page, and I said, I'm going to Google search feedlots for sale in Oklahoma. And I think there were 2 or 3 of them. One of them was a fairly new facility out, and it was way over our price range. One of them I think had actually been sold, and then it was we found this one in Cherokee, and I remember handing it to Keith, and he's like, how'd you find this? And I said, Google.
Yeah.
And so I think we called on it and, asked a few questions, and
I think God had a little bit to do with it.
I would say God had a lot to do with it. We had never really been west of 35, and so really wasn't even looking in this area because it wasn't familiar to us.
Sure.
So it's kind of looking back, it's really a funny story how we ended up in Cherokee. God's hand was definitely, because, you try to tell the story and you just can't even convey. People say, well, how'd you find Cherokee, Oklahoma? Google search. Literally a Google search.
Yeah.
So
I think, just looking back, how the pieces come from us trying to buy property in Georgia to here. I mean, that just how things didn't fall in place that we thought wasn't falling in place was actually leading us here. So pretty neat.
And even the timing of it, it was, I get what I would say a year or so ago, we decided that we were going somewhere. We had decided that we were going to put our house on the market in the spring. We were going to pretty much sell everything. And if we didn't have a place to go, we were just going to go to Oklahoma, rent a place, and find some jobs until we could figure out what we wanted to do. And then when we found this place, we came and visited. Well, the first time was in November a year ago. It was the week of Thanksgiving. We drove here We stayed at my sister's house, spent the night there, got up the next morning, drove to Cherokee, looked at this place, drove back to Pawhuska, stayed there, and got up the next morning and drove back to Georgia. Wow. So that was crazy, but we did it, and we kind of mulled over it and looked over it and decided that we were gonna put an offer in on it. And the process started in November. We were kind of back and forth, just with the ownership of the property and some of the legalities of it. Just kind of took some back and forth, and there was a lot of channels to work through. It was just, and at the time we were so frustrated. Like, why can't we, get this done? I mean, it's, but like, it was one of those things you were looking back going, not my time, his time. He knew our timeline better than we knew our timeline. And so that was in November. We came back out here in February and finalized a contract. And then we started the financing process of it and went with a company. Everything was fine. What was it, about a week before, we were due to close or something. I can't remember. The bank's like, oh, we changed our mind.
Oh, man.
It was, we're like, okay, now what do we do? And then Keith called a local bank here, and they said, sure, we'll do it. We're like, what? That easy? We've been, jumping through hurdles and, for a month with this other company. It can't be that easy. And, it was just my prayer through the whole process was, dear Lord, just close doors that no man can open and open doors that no man can close. And like I said, he knew our timing, and he knew, when our house would sell and how everything could just fall into place. And we closed on this place April 29th. And I mean, he has just blessed us immensely from start to finish. And it's the coolest story to just look back and see. So.
And probably one of for me, confirmation that we were supposed to be here. The president of the bank come by one day that did the loan for us, and she said she sat out there at the end of the driveway and prayed for a godly couple to buy this place. So.
And it happened.
So.
Man, you're making us all cry.
Yeah, it was the weekend. No, it was the weekend we moved here. It wasn't the weekend we closed on it. It was Memorial Day weekend. She came by to check on us and, and told us that story. And it was like, it just gives you chill bumps to know that just how all the pieces have fit together. And, when you move to a town that you have, nobody. We didn't know a soul here, not one soul. And a neighbor. So Keith was here. We closed in April. Keith moved here pretty much in May. I had to stay back in Georgia, sell the house, pack the house up, get all those things done. So he was pretty much here by himself. And this place had been neglected for the last several years and needed a lot of work. So Keith came out and he started just kind of piece by piece trying to put some things back together. And he went to church on Sunday. He said, I'm going to church. And a guy said, well, let me take you to lunch. His wife was out of town. And I'll never forget, he texted me and he said, he went to church and he said, I'm going to lunch with a guy. And I said, well, I guess that's better than you going to church going to dinner with a girl. So we just kind of laughed. But that man has just, he is, become one of our dearest friends. I mean, and then that just kind of, then he introduced us to someone else. And I mean, anytime we need help, I mean, we have friends and neighbors that just come by and just, well, what can I do? You got a load out there that needs working and, you need a hand, and they all jump in. And part of that prayer was that, send us friends, We don't know anybody.
Yeah.
You can't, we don't have any family, in this town. So you got to have friends, and the Lord has blessed us there as well. I mean, it just.
Not even a year in.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And that guy, that particular Sunday, I mean, he took me to businesses and different folks, just all in one day right there.
Wow.
Been there eating. The funny part is, he said, "Where you want to go eat?" And I said, "I've been eating sandwiches, been here by myself." And we went to Subway. So.
That's good.
But definitely a blessing.
Yeah. So you sold a lot of your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you actually bring here? Did you bring any livestock?
We brought, I call them the retired showgirls. We brought 5 of my son's show heifers and 1 calf on a trailer and 2 horses. That was it. And 2 dogs.
And that was somewhat of a blessing, too, because we were able, because this place did come with all the equipment. So, in a sense, we sold every piece of farm equipment except for just a handful of things. So, in Georgia, so that helped us, somewhat in the move, too.
Yeah.
So, it was.
Because you look back, trying to move across the country, what you have left of a farm and a house, I don't know how we did it.
And that was kind of, Sandi touched on it a little bit about how things fell together. We couldn't sell a piece of equipment forever. I mean, it was just like, I can't get rid of none of this equipment. And the guy I actually leased the farm from ended up buying it all.
Wow.
He decided that he wanted to continue growing hay and doing that. So we had the hay equipment, so he bought it. So it was, there was things, you get so frustrated, and then, God just says, let me show you this. And you just stand there and you just are in awe.
Wow.
So
How does this operation differ from what you were doing in Georgia?
The biggest thing, I guess, is it is a confinement operation. Back in Georgia, we were able to turn cattle out on grass traps. So, they had the option of grass, or we did supplement them with feed. So, but here, it's just like, Sunday afternoon, whatever they're going to eat is what you're going to give them. So that's probably the biggest thing. We still get a lot of cattle out of the southeast. So we're still dealing with the same type of cattle. It's just we're doing it more on a confinement. So that's probably been the biggest challenge. And we got a good nutritionist now that we're working with. So that's helped me a lot right there. And then dealing with some different feed products, things like that. But that's probably the biggest difference.
Yeah. Tell us about your operation here and describe it for our listeners. Like if they were to drive into the place, what would they see?
We are a starting yard, a backgrounding cattle. We predominantly take in high-risk cattle. These are cattle that generally come out of the sale barn right there with no known history right there. So we got a vaccination program. And then we basically, from vaccinating, is pretty much just kind of a hands-on from there on out for the next 60 days. And most of our cattle are here for about 60 to 75 days, but the cattle generally come in weighing anywhere from 3 to 5 probably. So it's very labor intensive. Cattle, just from the area that we are getting cattle from back southeast, are kind of known as them high risk cattle. So a lot of doctrine. So, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Okay. So this far into it, are you totally glad you made the move?
yes, without a doubt.
Yes, I mean and I wish I had our we had to, before we were doing all the financing, we kind of had to do a business plan and kind of the number of cattle that we were going to run and the steps we were going to grow. And I think we doubled that in the first 2 or 3 months that we were planning on.
This is kind of a neat story, but I had gone back to Georgia. I was kind of back and forth the first couple of months, and I was balancing the checkbook, and I'm like, we're in the negatives. So I called Keith. He's like, well, how'd that happen? I said, I don't know, but we're in the negatives. And I remember praying and trying to figure out how to, make things work, because, we were using every dime we had, every piece of savings, everything to do this. And I think it was later that evening or maybe the next morning, and Keith calls and he says, you figured out that program? Because we had gotten a new computer program. And I said, I think so. He said, well, get ready because we got a load coming in tomorrow. And, it was kind of, I don't even remember if we were 100% ready for cattle yet, but
Ready or not.
Ready or not, here they come. And they just kept coming. It didn't stop. And I remember shipping that first load out. I'm a girl, so you get a little emotional, but I kind of felt like, well, they're leaving us. Why are they leaving us? But then they, were replaced with some more, and you don't quite get that sentimental on them. But I do remember that first load. In any time, I mean, there's been a couple of times where, we've been very, my prayer was always, dear Lord, let us spend our money wisely and, just put it in the right places. And, there was at one point where I remember looking at, what the banknote was due and our taxes were due, and, how the checkbook had been going up until that point. And I was like, dear Lord, I just don't see this. I said, I know that you brought us here for a reason. I know you're going to take care of us. And it was about a week or two before Christmas, and I was going to go back to Georgia for a couple of days. And I was, balancing the checkbook and doing different things. And I looked at the ending balance, and I was like, there's our payments. I mean, it was there. Like, it was just, I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. How did this all happen? I've been watching it so closely, and it was there.
Wow.
And, we have, we've made that first payment to the bank. That's done. The taxes are paid. That's done. Not to say that we don't, we've got some other obstacles that we've got to overcome, but over and over and over again, he has shown me that it will be there. And not my timing, but his timing.
Wow. It had to be overwhelming. I mean, coming in and trying to figuring out where to start?
Well, we've often asked ourselves if we had to do it over again, would we do it? And I don't know if we've ever come up with an answer or not. So, because there was a lot of pieces to get here. But it was easier for me to get started than Sandi, because this is the business that I was in. I'm just doing it somewhat in a confinement operation, and Sandi went from a women's boutique to working cattle. So that was the...
Yeah, I sometimes joke, and I'm like, I gave up a really cushy job for this. I didn't have to work when it was 20 degrees outside and the wind's blowing and, it's raining, or, like I said, but I have really enjoyed it. And I did have somebody ask me, he's like, well, what job did you like better? Do you like, the job you came from or the job you have here? And I said, it's really, I can't say that I like one better than the other, but what I do like is my life here. I like the slower pace. I like, just the people and the town and, just everything about, the area. I joked, one of the jokes was, when we were looking for a place, I was like, well, just make sure I'm within 45 minutes of a Target. That's all I ask. Well, I'm not 45 minutes from a Target. But when you grow
It's been
up,
a blessing.
but when you grow up, where the grocery store or anything you could possibly need is within 10-minute drive, anything. And it's not even need, it's more want, because everything that I need is within 10 minutes. I have a very decent grocery store. We have a hardware store. There's been very, very, very few items that, we couldn't run to town or run to the next town over that's about 15, 20 minutes down the road and get what we needed. So I really love, my life here. I like it.
Probably the biggest surprise for me, or I don't know if surprise is right, but the people in the town. We talked about the friends, but just the people in general in Cherokee or this area has just been a real blessing. I mean, just, they want you to succeed here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
in more ways, more times than one, we have heard people say to us, oh, we're so glad you're here. And, this town needs this place. I mean, this place was started, in the 50s as a hog farm operation. I think the feed yard might have been built
late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. And so, and I think they started with fat cattle here, finishing them out. So, and there's been, I think we're the fifth owner?
Yeah.
About the fifth owner. So, I think that there's a lot of history here. And I know that we probably will never get it to what it looked like in its heyday, really. But our goal is to make it shine again.
Yeah. You're going to give it a new heyday.
That's right.
Yeah, one little pin at a time, trying to paint and fix and run cattle.
And how many folks have worked here? And
yeah, I don't
just the different stories you hear of.
Yeah,
one guy brought some cattle and he said, I got married right here at this spot. I didn't get him to elaborate on it, but
yeah, I mean, and if the person didn't work here, there was somebody in their family that did at some point in their life. So it's really a neat place. It's just it's a cool place. And I've had one guy say, well, I've worked, we had a guy help us out one weekend, and he said, I've been at a lot of feed yards. He said, this one is really nice. And I'm like, really? Because, it's got some age on it. It needs a new coat of paint. It needs, a repair here and there. But the bones of it, and that was kind of one of the things that, helped us make our decision. Yeah, it needs a lot of work, but the bones were here, and, the facilities are just a neat place.
And the location, I mean, we've gotten cattle in from New Mexico and Virginia and Georgia
Texas and South Dakota.
So, I mean, just kind of the hub right there.
Yeah, you don't go out too often and look out at the road and not see a cow truck come through here, up and down the road. So that's to me, it's just cool. So
yeah. And this place has the potential to provide a lot of jobs as you keep growing it.
Yeah, and we're probably just using about half the pens right now. So, we're going to kind of grow it slow because there is somewhat of a learning curve. So,
and we got a little faster start than we had planned. So, we were talking about, we had said we were going to do this many cattle, and all of a sudden we were twice that many cattle. So, we do know that we do need to figure some things out and make sure we do it right, because that's important to us. I mean, it's very easy in this business, I think, because everything's done almost on a handshake. And, your character and your reputation is all you have. Mm-hmm. And, we do, a lot of custom cattle and we, I made the comment one time, I said, well, we treat those cattle like they were our own. And Keith chimed in, he said, no, Sandi, he said, we treat those cattle better than our own. We want to be able to lay our heads down at night and know we have done the best job that we can do.
What advice would you have for somebody thinking about doing something similar, like literally putting it all in on a new dream?
Check your faith.
Yeah.
That'd be the first, I think.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, our inspiration came from a Sunday school teacher that we had before we moved. He was around our age and had a landscaping business, and I think a pretty successful one. But that's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a pilot, and he became that pilot. He risked a lot of things and put a lot of faith out there, and that's what he's doing now. And I think that kind of started our little, we'd always dreamed of having our own place because we had leased for, pretty much our entire, operation was on leased land. And, we wanted our own place. We wanted a place that if our kids decided that this is what they wanted to do, they had a place to do it. And so that was, I guess, really our dream. And I don't know that we could have done it before we did it. People how would you advise? I would say, once you get that dream, start chasing it. Don't wait till you're 45, 46 years old. I think it's scarier then, because you're supposed to be pretty stable then. And, at that point in your life. And
we're both 45.
Well, we're older now. Wow. That started at 45.
You're older.
Just a year.
I'm still 45.
You're still, yeah. But I've always said, well, you're 45 years old, jumping off a cliff, But I think I read in the Bible the other day about, committing your plans. You always say God's will, but, he's the one that gives you those dreams. You don't just make them up on your own. And if it's going to work out, if it's going to, not to say there's not going to be a bump here or there, but you're not going to have to force it. You shouldn't have to force it. And that's when you really know that, you feel that peace about, that window open or that door open.
Yeah, because I think when we were maybe trying to push some different things, whether it was the financing or the selling of the equipment or something, it was like, we got to do it. It's got to do it. And I think that was God showing his timing. It was just because, and like you said, like Sandi said, it'll come naturally, and you'll know it's not forced. I mean, and that gives your, if you got a dream and you kind of want it wrote out a plan, which that's, you don't always go as planned, but if it'll come pretty easy, I think, or it did for us as far as, and it gave us that.
Looking back.
Yeah, you're looking back, yeah.
Looking back, well, that was kind of easy. At the time, it may not have felt like that, but, I would encourage people to, take that first step of faith, and pray about it. Because if you don't do any of that, I could not imagine doing what we did without our faith in our God. It wouldn't have happened, or it wouldn't have been a successful thing, I don't think. And I can't say that we're a success so much. We've still got a long ways to go, but we have come a long way, and he has provided, and it's.
What's the build it and they will come?
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of, I made a few phone calls on, that we were kind of open for business, but it's just pretty much folks have just come by. I mean, it's like,
just a word of mouth,
It's just a word of mouth, or just,
a phone call. Hey, I got a truckload headed your way. Could you take them?
I mean, it's
That's
just,
happened more than once.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
just,
they'll be there in 3 hours.
but it's just been amazing, the people and the customers. It just
Don't know us from Adam's house cat and just placed, a very large amount of money in our care.
Yeah.
I just and that goes back to, what we were talking about with our character and what we believe. We want people to be able to, know that we're going to do the best job, and that, that's kind of we want that reputation.
But yeah, I mean, but going back to our dream, we didn't have this plan, I take that back. I mean, I had some customer base, but, it just goes back to him taking care of us. And if you're in God's will, and you got that dream, then it'll come together.
I totally agree. Yep. So, as we've been talking about, this is a big project to get this up and running back at full capacity. What is next for you to tackle?
We did, before purchasing the property, I did contact one of the previous owners and tried to find out as much, about the property as we could, because we were 14 hours away. The water here has always been somewhat of an issue. And when we first got here, that was probably our major expenditures of putting in new water pipes and new water. So we're fitting to start phase 2, is what I call it, on putting in some more water tanks and water lines. But that's kind of the next project for me anyway.
And there's a few cosmetic things that, we'd like to do. We've started painting some of the fences, and there's a little horse barn that when you come into the property, it's right there. And, we'd like to kind of fix that up, just cleaning up we've got a guy right now hauling off some scrap iron, trying to get things cleaned up. And this place was pretty much covered in weeds.
Wow.
When we moved. I mean, there were fences you couldn't even see because of the weeds. And Keith said the other day, he said, we need to make sure we save some money for a good sprayer this summer.
It was vacant for over a year as far as cattle.
Yeah. So.
And actually, when we got here, probably in the first 30 days, we actually got a guy to come in and aerial spray the whole pens, just because it was so growed up, just so we could kind of see the bottom of it.
Wow.
So.
Well, that's great. How do we follow along?
We do have an Instagram page and a Facebook page, Mitcham Livestock. And I do try to post pictures and stories and things. We have a lot of people back east that they eat it up. They love it. They love seeing our story and what happens next. And I'll get messages from them now. Well, how are you doing that? And what are you doing this for? And well, I just bought some cattle. What are you doing? Why are you doing it this way? And we share. And I just it's really, really cool. I love the comments and things that we get. Just to be able to be an inspiration to other people that I always joke that. Or at least my family, I said, I don't think anybody really, when we said, oh, we're moving to Oklahoma when our son graduates from school, I don't really 100% think people really took us seriously until we showed them, hey, we just closed on a piece of property in Oklahoma. We're moving in a month.
I guess something we didn't touch on that, but we, as far as the family land that we had was not enough to be sustainable for production agriculture. I did say, my brother, they kind of did the agritourism, but we rented most of our land right there. So it was hard to put a lot of money into it because it wasn't a long-term lease.
And the facilities, they were, they needed some work. Like like the fences, needed to be replaced. But when you don't, have a long-term lease on something, you really, don't want to put that investment in there and then the landlord say, oh, guess what?
Yeah.
I have other plans now. And so, I often say that, those fences were held together by a prayer, because if you touched them, they were coming down.
Well, we rented that place for 18 years. So, and, we did do the grunt work. That was kind of my college of getting to this place. It was, doing things that may not be ideally the way you'd want them do them, but, it was kind of what we had to do to get by.
Putting Band-Aids and piecing things together.
We paid our dues
Yeah.
on it. So, but we were able to.
So when we got here, I think Keith might have said to something, he said, well, I've been training for this for 20 years.
Yeah.
But it's a whole lot different it's a different feeling when you're fixing something that you own.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's, I still am in awe. I still drive down the road and go, I can't believe I live here. I mean, it's the sunsets and the sunrises and just looking out. One of the things it was too, when the farthest west past 35 we had been was the day we came and looked at this place. And I just remember seeing how flat and open it started getting. And I was like, wow, this is pretty flat, Keith. This is pretty open. But I love it now. I couldn't, I kind of wondered if that would be okay. And it's gorgeous. And I love going out at night and I can look up and you can see the stars. You can see, and I remember standing there one night going, Keith, you've got to look at this. I just can't remember the last time I looked up at the stars and saw how bright there were and how many of them there were. And, and I stand there some days and I just look out over the place, and I go, this is ours. This is ours. God has blessed us. This is ours. Because we really, before this place, we owned 1.3 acres and a house. That was really all that was in our name. Everything else was either family land or rented land. But this is ours. And it makes a big difference. And it's awesome.
Makes you put a lot of pride in it.
Even when you get that water leak on Sunday morning trying to get to church. Got a new water leak. Oh, Keith, it's our water leak to fix.
Well, guys, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I love your story. It's so inspiring, and I can't wait for other people to hear it too.
Yep. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
This was fun.
Well, I love to hear how well things are going for Keith and Sandi in this new venture and that their risk is paying off. And also how happy they are. You can literally hear it in their voices in this interview, and I'm so glad for them. I'm also so excited to tell you about what might be one of the best things we've done yet, Cultivate by Rural Revival. This is our new online membership group focused on growing your business and reviving your town. So if you're a small business owner, a chamber director or board member, or someone who is focused on bringing life to your small town, this is where you'll find valuable tools and strategies, as well as inside access to successful rural entrepreneurs and leaders who are making a difference. Go to ruralrevival.co/cultivate for all the details, and I hope to see you in the group. Thank you to Keith and Sandi for being on the podcast and inspiring us all. And thanks to you for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Have a great day, everybody.